Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to today's webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be on a listen-only mode. Should you wish to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature located in the left-hand corner of your screen. As a reminder, this call is being recorded Tuesday, January 26, 2016. I would now like to turn the conference over to Matt Russell. Matt, please go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Russell. I'm with the USDA Farm to School Grant Program. I just wanted to say welcome and thanks for joining us today for this optional webinar where we're going to talk about the grant program for FY16 grantees, the grant program evaluation and reporting requirements. I'm joined today by several colleagues. We have Matt Benson, who works at the National Office for the Farm to School team. Also joined by Andrew Powers, who is with Peer & Associates and who's helping out the USDA with our evaluation efforts. And also joined by Dawn Addison, a grant officer who works out of the National Office in Washington, D.C. As Kathy said, there's the chat function over on the left-hand side, so that's the way that we'll be communicating for this call, and we will be taking chats during the presentation. So you can send them during the presentation or at the end, and we'll go through all the questions. If we don't get you during the conversation, we'll circle back. We'll go through all the chat questions and answer them then. Just real quick with the agenda, we're going to do a quick background about the reporting and the grant program, the importance of evaluation data, talk about evaluation resources that are available to you all as grantees. We'll talk about the reporting requirements, both project reporting requirements and the financial reporting requirements. And then again, we'll circle back at the end with Q&A, which will consist of us working through any of the questions that come through the chat function on the left. So again, housekeeping, the audio is through your computer, so you should be able to hear us through the computer right now. If you're having any problems with that, just use the chat function and we can troubleshoot with you. Also, again, the chat function is the only way that we're taking questions on this call. We don't have any audio call-in for this one. And then finally, that the webinar is being recorded. So we'll have both the PDF of the slides available to you, and then also the recording, the audio recording. We'll put a link out. We'll send it out to everybody, and we'll also post it on our website. So with that, just real quick background on the grant program. Everybody's pretty familiar with it as grantees. You all have obviously put a lot of effort into your proposals and now getting onboarded and have spent a lot of time with the grant program. But quick background, Section 243 of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010 established the Farm to School program. And that includes the grant program, so that's what authorizes and funds the program that you are participating in. And as part of that authorizing legislation, it lays out what Congress is asking of the USDA, what they want from the program. And part of that is they directed the program to include an evaluation component. So you can see here, the grantees are to cooperate in evaluation and carried out using the grant funds. So that just to give you some context, that the evaluation obviously is very important. We're going to talk more about the importance of evaluation, but it's also a required part of the grant program as authorized by Congress, which is why everybody submitted, as part of your proposal, some element of evaluation. So without taking up too much time with the background introduction, we're going to jump right in. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Matt Benson, and he's going to lead us through the discussion about project-level evaluation.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast, and good morning to folks joining us from the West Coast. I wanted to talk about 4 key uses of evaluation data. But before we do that, I just wanted to touch on really the main purpose of program evaluation and reporting. And really there's 2 main purposes in why we all do evaluation for our project. The first being really to understand the impact of using these fairly limited federal resources and tax dollars. So kind of answering the question, what are people getting out of our investment, our $5 million investment in Farm to School at USDA? And so evaluation really is meant to help understand the impact, the overall impact of the grant program. Evaluation is important, and a central purpose is also to really understand and determine best practices for achieving goals that Farm to School programs wish to achieve. Primarily at USDA, we see it as a way to improve public health and nutrition through the use of local foods in school meals, and of course strengthening local and regional economies through the use of local foods in schools. And so we can understand the best practices through evaluation and towards reaching these goals in the fastest, most efficient way that we can. So evaluation is really important. Those are some of the key reasons why we want to do it. And I thought we'd just start off with talking a bit about 4 other key uses for evaluation data. So we ask a lot of our grantees in terms of project reporting and in terms of evaluation, and just wanted to highlight some uses of that data locally for you guys. So evaluation data is important because first, it can help tell your story. And the important part is telling your story. It's important that everyone understands the great work that you all are doing, and whether your project is bringing local foods in the school meals, or developing school gardens, or maybe taking kids to a farm, or bringing the farmer to the school. You all are seeing these positive benefits from these activities. And evaluating the impact of those activities can help validate these experiences and help validate these experiences with decision makers and important community stakeholders. The media is always looking for positive things to highlight, and your program is one of those things, and evaluation data can help support that. Evaluation data can also help guide your training and technical assistance. Through the forms and things that you're asking folks to complete, you can gain information in terms of what areas your farm to school activities may need help, that your farm to school activities may need help in, and may help identify training and technical assistance needs. So for example, maybe you have a school garden, and your school garden is an outdoor classroom. It's a learning environment for elementary students. But you're finding through your evaluation activities that your students, the students that are participating in that school garden, aren't quite learning that much from their participation. So one, that's a great thing to learn, and two, by learning that, you can better understand the additional resources and the additional curriculum and perhaps some professional development training that may be needed for the teachers supporting that school garden. And so it can really help direct and guide your technical assistance needs through your evaluation activities. Number 3, evaluation data can also help really track and measure the progress that you're achieving through your project. So one thing we ask each grantee to do is complete a baseline report. Hopefully many of the folks on the call have received an invitation to complete that report. And so that baseline report provides a starting point or a starting place by which your project is set to take off. And by completing evaluation data and completing the progress reports and the final report asks very similar questions, a few more of them, than what you will be asked or have been asked in the baseline report. And so looking at the baseline and the final report can really understand the growth and the positive impacts that your project has achieved through its activities. Evaluation data, and fourth and finally, is also really important because one, it can help influence policy. in many of the policies that have been written either at the state, local, or national level supporting farm-to-school activities and programs, they often include little pieces of data that's been collected either through research or through evaluation activities. And so this data is really important because it has a tremendous impact and ability to influence policy at any of those levels. Decision makers, lawmakers, they love the testimonials from the programs that you share either as a project coordinator or as a participant. But other research and evaluation data that you collect can often help validate those personal experiences. Moving on, just wanted to briefly share kind of select evaluation resources for you to all take a look at when you're designing and developing your evaluation. And we'll circle back to these later on for those folks who will be joining us at the Grantee gathering in April. So the first resource that I thought we'd share was the USDA Farm to School Planning Toolkit, and that's available for download online at the USDA Farm to School program homepage. There's a little left-hand link that says Planning Toolkit, and you can download a PDF version of this resource. There's 2 modules in this toolkit that can help potentially with your program evaluation activities. Module number 2 is really awesome because it will help you establish your project vision and goals and really start to think through some of the long and short-term objectives that you hope your project will achieve. So it's Module 2 is a great resource for planning your evaluation. Module 10, which you see here, is another great resource and will help you walk through evaluating your activities and connecting these activities to the different outcomes that you hope to achieve. So for example, there lists a bunch of different outcomes areas in groups in terms of positive benefits that you hope to achieve related to student outcomes, farmer or producer outcomes that you hope to achieve, teacher outcomes, food service operator outcomes. So it's another great kind of 2.0 to the first module to help plan your evaluation efforts. The second resource that we wanted to highlight today was a resource that was developed and released by the National Farm to School Network, and that is Evaluation for Transformation. And this is, you can download this resource. I think it's about a 150-page resource right online on the National Farm to School Network's homepage. And it is probably the most comprehensive resource in terms of laying out the measures or metrics that your project activities hope to achieve in terms of 4 key impact areas. So it breaks down a set of measures for each of these 4 impact areas: community economic development, public health, education, environmental quality. And these measures are all things that you can either do a survey about or send out a questionnaire about or conduct an interview with a stakeholder or make an observation about. And so these measures, you can collect information for each of these measures and then connect each of these measures to one of the 4 impact areas. Within the document, they classify measures by program level measures, policy level measures, and also research area measures. And so that's pretty in-depth. And we would really recommend focusing in this resource the program level measures. These are the measures that you'll want to look at and perhaps include in a questionnaire and track over time within your project. Excuse me. The third resource that I wanted to highlight was a great resource developed by the Colorado Farm to School Task Force, and this is downloadable right on the Colorado Farm to School Task Force website. And this is a similar evaluation toolkit, to others, it breaks things down into 10 different modules with 2 more forthcoming. And these modules, rather than being broken down by impact area, they are broken down by the groups that are involved within farm-to-school programs. And so for each module, it lists a set of outcomes that may take place as part of that group, as well as it connects each of those outcomes to activities supporting this outcome, methodologies for measuring this outcome, and different measurement tools. So it's really another great resource. You can download each individual attachment or module there, or you can download the whole toolkit. And really the purpose of my going through these resources is just to provide a starting point for folks to explore and take a look at and dig into before they start completing the majority of their project activities. In addition, another piece of the Colorado Farm-to-School Evaluation Toolkit is they have a sample template that you can download in Microsoft Word to help start planning for your evaluation activities. So, for example, you can see that the outcomes are on the left-hand side, and that's where you should start. So, for example, say the outcome you're trying to achieve is an increase in economic opportunities for farmers. You want to have more markets available for local and regional farmers. You can walk through step by step how you plan to achieve that outcome through your program activities. You can also step-by-step process to see what measurement tool you're going to use or develop to measure whether or not you've actually increased those economic opportunities for farmers. You can map out the timeline by which the measurement will take place, different data collection and analysis steps, and then who, as part of your project staff or project coordinator staff, will actually complete that part of the evaluation plan. So it's a great kind of evaluation program planning tool. And it being in Word, you can just fully customize it to your project needs. Another resource that I just wanted to point folks to is this resource also developed by the National Farm-to-School Network, and it's bearing fruit. And this resource I selected, it's over 200 pages, first of all. So it's very much a very in-depth resource for everyone. So there's a lot there. But I selected this one because I really think it has really probably the best or most comprehensive sampling of different surveys and questionnaires that you may want to use throughout your project depending on the different audience. So the document actually has attached questionnaires that have already been developed by researchers and scholars across the country that you can kind of just take and go depending on what group your project activities are influencing. So it was a precursor to the Evaluation for Transformation, but another great resource that you can download right on the National Farm-to-School Network website. Another one is the Wisconsin Farm-to-School Toolkit. And this is able to be downloaded at the University of Wisconsin's Center for Integrated and Agricultural Systems website. Obviously another great resource that has a bunch of different sample surveys and questionnaires. I selected this one because it also provides sample tracking tools that you can actually use, download in both Excel and Word form to kind of track both local purchasing activities that schools or districts that may be purchasing local foods as part of your project. And then you can also track activities that are taking place within your project. So kind of is very dynamic and allows you to kind of keep track of things over time. And again, the URL for downloading that or taking a look at that resource is there. And I know Matt will make these slides available. I wanted to just make everyone aware of a webinar an additional webinar taking place later this week regarding the evaluation, and it's on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. This is available, more information about this webinar is available also on the USDA Farm to School program homepage under webinars. It's going to be Lynn Kathleen is going to be the presenter. She's a great presenter, helped develop and was very much involved with developing the Farm to School Toolkit in Colorado. And I know Lynn will do a great job related to setting goals and establishing an evaluation baseline. So more information about that is on our webpage. You can also go on YouTube and you can listen in to an evaluation webinar that was completed this past May by Gail Feenstra, who is a nationally renowned, probably internationally renowned evaluation expert from UC Davis. And this webinar is great because Gail walks through step by step how folks in Davis, California have been able to pick project outcomes and link them to the different activities and measure and report on those outcomes. So it's about a 45-minute webinar that Gail presents on, and it's a great resource for folks that are interested in diving and digging deeper. Again, this is really just a sample of resources, and we'll circle back with more about evaluation at the Grantee Gathering and in other experiences, but wanted to just kind of give folks a snapshot of some resources and things they may be aware of. With that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Powers, who is from Peer Associates and is helping us through a third-party evaluation. So Andrew?
Thank you, Matt. Can you hear me? Am I properly unmuted here to join the party?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We are having an action-packed webinar here with a lot of information coming at you. So again, it is being recorded, and the slides will be available later, so you don't have to capture it all now. I'm about to jump into a second phase, so if you want to hop up and do a few jumping jacks, sit back down and keep listening. We will continue. So I'm Andrew Powers, and I'm with Peer Associates. I'm not with the USDA, but I'm working closely with Matt and Matt, the USDA, to run their evaluation and reporting system that are gathering data about your projects. My purpose on the call today is just to make a quick introduction to myself and describe some of the reporting that you'll be doing this year. You will be hearing more from me. Hopefully, we'll see you at the Grantee Gathering later this year in Texas. And in the meantime, if you end up having trouble with some of the online systems, you'll probably connect with me on that. So the first thing that I wanted to clarify, and I think this is a really important distinction, is what we're talking about when we're talking about reporting and evaluation, or evaluation and reporting. There are two different things we've been talking about. One is at the project level, and one is really at the program level. So the evaluation of your project, and this is what Matt was giving all these resources about, is really what you're doing in your site. This is your design, and the USDA doesn't have specific requirements about this. This may be what you submitted as part of your proposal, and very likely something you'll modify and continue to evolve and adapt over the course of your project. And it really is designed to serve your needs, to help you learn what you need to learn about how your work is going and what you need to share with your project stakeholders. The USDA doesn't have specific requirements for what you measure, and there's lots of things to measure, as Matt was sharing with those ample resources, though they do want to hear what you learn. So you are asked to submit your evaluation results along the way and at the end of your project. So at the other next level up is what we've been calling reporting, and this is the standardized reporting that everyone, and there's a slight exception for the training grants that we'll talk about, but everyone will be submitting some of the same data to the USDA through the baseline, progress, and final reporting. And the idea behind that is that that's more of the program level evaluation. As Matt mentioned earlier, what we want to be able to do is say across all of the grantees and across $5 million a year, what are some of the things that we can say about what's being achieved as a whole? So you've got at your project level, you've got your individual achievements and a lot of level of detail that we can't get into at the program level. And so at the program level, there's certain measures that we're asking everyone to report on, and we'll talk about what those are today. We're going to look a little more in detail at the baseline report, since that is what is on your plate right now. And I should say there may be some overlap between the two as well. So for your reporting requirements, we've got three main pieces here. One is the baseline report, which has already been sent out, and some of you, I think about 17 superstars, have already completed, which is great. And if you haven't, you've still got time. And we'll be talking some about the questions that are on there today to hopefully clarify any questions still remaining. And you've got progress reporting that will be, depending on your grant type, either quarterly or semi-annual. And at the end of it all, there'll be a final report that, as Matt Benson mentioned, is similar to your baseline report, and we'll have a little more additional questions on top of that. In terms of your baseline report, so we'll get into some of the details of this. We've had it for about 2 weeks, ideally, and maybe not all of you, but those who were the reporting contacts. Oh, that's one thing I wanted to mention about the reporting. It all happens online. So you provided a reporting contact, and that person will get an invitation, and that invitation will have a unique link to the report for your project. And because those links are unique, you can either fill it out right then and submit it, you can close it and come back to it later to be there waiting for you where you left off. You'll have about, I think, on each of these reports about a month from when it opens. The final report, you have more time. Progress reporting, you have about a month from receiving the link to completing it. The system has been working pretty smoothly, and if you have any trouble with it, we are here to help. And again, probably you may get in touch with me through Matt if anything bogs down. So all of this takes place online, and with the invitations, you also get a Word version of the report so you can review it in advance. And if you want to prepare it in advance and then just cut and paste, that might make it easier and smoother. So the baseline report, we still got a couple of weeks to complete it. Ideally, everyone will be able to get that done February 12th. Just looking for one survey per project, so make sure you're clear on your team who is the one who's filling that out. It is probably easier in this case to prepare your data in advance. There are some detailed questions there that you won't on the top of your head have the answer to necessarily. So that, like I said, a Word version of the report has been provided, and I would recommend filling it out there and then just cutting and pasting when you go to the link. And again, we're here to help with any questions you have about filling out the report and specific items on the report. We're just going to look a little at those today, not in great detail, but just to give an overview and maybe answer a few questions that come up. So the baseline report covers 5 main content areas. We're interested in your partnership, your project network, who's involved. Very interested in procurement, local procurement, what local foods are being purchased and served. Interested in how things are being prepared and how they're being served. Bullet number 4 here is the wide world of farm-to-school activities. That encompasses many, many different types of things. We'll get a little into that in a minute. And also interested at the policy level. I'm just going to say a little bit about each of these, and feel free to pop on the chat with any specific questions. Hopefully folks have had a chance to look at the baseline report and flag any things that are confusing. We can talk about those now, and you can always reach out at any time for clarity. So in terms of partnerships and networks, there's really an amazing array of players in the farm-to-school world. It always amazes me what a long list of different organizations we ask if they're involved in your project and at what level. And it's a fairly simplified set of questions about these. We're really just interested in who's involved with your project and your approximation of their level of involvement. And it's a fairly straightforward approximation, like are they, somewhat involved, very involved, deeply involved. I haven't popped my mind the question, but it's basically we're looking at a broad survey. We'd like to know across the entire grant cohort what types of organizations are involved in, how involved are they. And we also ask a little more in detail, who are the key partners? Who are the most important people in achieving your work and why? After that, we are interested in procurement is really at the heart of many farm to school projects. That's how the farm gets to the school, is through local procurement. And we have some detailed questions in this section that are very aligned with, some of you may be familiar with the Farm to School Census, which has been run twice now. And these are the very same questions that are on the census. So in some cases, you may already have some of this as a result of your school or your district having completed that. So in this case, it's important to, I know all of you have different sort of scopes of your project. We've got some who are just single schools or single districts, multiple schools, multiple districts. Some grantees work with entire states worth of districts. So when it comes to answering these procurement questions, you have an option of choosing how much you can report on. In the survey, it asks you, would you like to report on all the schools or districts you're working with, or some of them, or none of them? It's up to you to choose what level of data you feel comfortable and you feel capable of pursuing. We certainly encourage people to invest your evaluation resources in this information. This is a really central and key data point, and we would love to have the best data possible about what's going on for local procurement. So you'll want to do a little investigating with food service directors and other people who are involved in the procurement to figure out what you think you'll be able to get for this, and keep track of who you're working with on this, because you'll want to report for the same schools again at the end of your project time. So even though it may change who you're working with, ideally you'll report on the same set of schools at the beginning and at the end. So these questions deal with a couple different elements of procurement. One is just total dollar amount of local procurement. Also, what types of suppliers are involved, directly and indirectly, what's being purchased, and how it's being used and how frequently. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to take a look at those questions, think about who you can gather that data from, because again, what we're interested in is sort of the aggregate data. You don't need to report school by school, you're just going to want to keep yourself some sort of spreadsheet and add it up. One question has jumped in here. Also, at the very beginning of the survey is a question about how many FTE are involved in the project. And I think everyone can see this question, I'm assuming. And everyone should be able to see. I'll just read it. So on the question of how many FTE are on the project, is that grant funded match? So it is. Yes, this question is how many total are involved, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, I think how many total are involved in your project, not just as part of the USDA, or not just funded by USDA grant funding.
Yep.
And if you have, yes, the question, if you have a couple of part-time people, do we combine numerical percentages for a total FTE dedicated? Yes, that is what you want to do. So if you've got a bunch of part-time people, you can add that together for the total staff involved in the project. And again, it doesn't have to be just who's funded through the grant funding, but total involved in the project you're working on. So jumping back, hopefully that answers your question there, Miles. If not, feel free to follow up. Jumping back to the baseline report, moving on from procurement, there's a small section on food preparation and serving. There's a couple questions about training. I think on the baseline it's just, are you providing training, currently providing training for food service staff in food preparation? And then a question about percentage of scratch cooking that's going on in the schools. And again, you may need to do some averaging if you're reporting on multiple schools and districts. Again, we ask, it's hard to get totally precise on some of these numbers. Just do the best job you can estimating some of these cases. With respect to activities, we just got a big checklist. It's the same checklist that is in the Farm to School Census, and just checks in basically. And these don't have to be things that you're responsible for having started with this grant project. This is what is going on in the schools and districts you're working with right now as you get started with this. So just sort of taking the baseline, taking the pulse. What already exists in the world of farm-to-school activities across a couple different dimensions here: procurement, curriculum, promoting and communicating about your project. And in addition, specifically, we ask, how many school gardens are you involved with? School gardens are a fairly key component of many farm-to-school projects, so we're just trying to track the numbers and how they change. And last but not least, we are interested in policies that are supportive of farm-to-school. So we've got a short checklist of policies, interested in finding out what's already in place as you get started with your grant project, and then we'll look at that again at the end, see what if anything's changed. For any training grantees on the line, things are slightly different. You had no baseline report that was due. Your progress and final reporting, we're just in the final stages of working those out, and those will be available shortly, and we'll share them as soon as we've got those. Your progress reporting, this actually should say progress reporting, is going to be semi-annual, and your financial reporting will be quarterly. The progress reporting is going to look, if you look on the grantee resources page, which I'll mention in a minute, it will look similar to what the other grantees are filling out. The progress reporting is more a couple of open-ended questions just to get an update. It's not detailed in the same way that baseline and final reports are. And the training grantees also have a set of required questions to ask of participants in your events and your trainings. These came with your award letter in Appendix A, so you've got those as some required questions and some suggested questions. And these are also available on the grantee resource page, which looks like it just was right by the chat window here. I see a couple more questions coming in. Maybe I will continue to the end of this this section and jump back and see if we can answer some of those. So I think on the chat window, a link just came to this page. Looks like this. You can either follow that link there. Looks like the same link that is. Yes. So I would strongly recommend everyone go take a look at this, bookmark this link. Everything you need. I shouldn't say everything. That's saying a lot. A lot of what you're going to want for reporting and evaluation is on this page. So definitely go there. You're going to find the schedule of the reporting. You're going to find copies of all the reports that you can download and work with. You're going to find, Matt Benson mentioned earlier, the Evaluation for Transformation framework. We've done a little work to link that framework specifically with the reporting that's required, so you can see how those things tie together. If you really like getting under the hood of evaluation, you might want to check that out and see how this reporting is related to this larger framework and how you might fit in your own evaluation. And what I would mostly like to, not mostly, but would like to call your attention to as well, it's new this year as we've developed some tracking sheets that the Excel version looks a bit like this picture on the slide here. These are specifically designed to help you over the course of your project gather the data that's going to be in the final report. We would really like folks to download these and try them out and give us some feedback on them. Again, they're new. We would like to facilitate the collection of the data that's on the final report, make that as simple as possible, give you one place to help track it. So there's Word version and Excel version. The Excel version is a bit more automated. It'll do some adding up for you. But if you're not a fan of spreadsheets, you can also use the Word version. Definitely check those out. They're very closely tied in to the reporting. They'll tell you which question that it refers to. And those should be helpful. They'll help you a little bit if you haven't done your baseline yet. There's a few items on the baseline that might help you with too. So I would definitely recommend checking those out and making use of those. So overall, our goal with reporting and evaluation is to make it as useful to you as possible and as least burdensome at the same time. We realize there are a lot of questions. We do need to find out what you're doing and be able to tell the story of this program and this grant cohort. So it does require some effort on your part, but we're here to help, and we would like to make it as straightforward as possible. So always feel free to reach out with any questions that come up about the reporting here. I'm just going to look real quick at a couple of questions related to this in case it helps to answer them now. So I will read them, and we can see how we can do to answer them. We've got one from Katrina that says, if we are working with 3 districts, how would you like us to aggregate the information? One report with all the data circled that is relevant, or sending you the reports from each district. So I think yes, we would like it on one report with all of the data circled that is relevant. I think just aggregate it as best you can from all 3 districts, add it up, and we don't need to see district by district. So yeah, if you've got different activities in different districts, just consolidate that all into the one activity checklist. You've got, add up the procurement numbers from each district if you've got those. So yeah, just one report and add it all together. And there's another question here from Mia. If we're working with 2 districts, did you say we should average them when answering questions that don't allow us to differentiate answers for each district? So there you have a variety of questions. Maybe if you're talking about the partnership questions, yeah, you might just sort of like to average, say, across these districts, you sort of got this average level of support from this type of partner. So yeah, if you can't differentiate, you can average, or if it's like a procurement question, you can add. That is answering that question. I realize it's the more you're working with, sort of the trickier it gets to do these. So we appreciate your effort in consolidating your data into one report. It looks like there was a question from Shirley about a schedule for the semi-annual quarterly financial reports. That should be in the on the grantee resource page. You will find a calendar, which yes, and that is. So yes, that's it for this bit of discussion of evaluation and reporting. Thanks for joining in. I'm looking forward to working with you and helping to document all the great work you're doing and meeting lunch with you this spring at Grantee Gather. So, give it back to you, Matt Rowe.
Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate it. That's a lot of great information. We're going to keep moving on here. The last part of our presentation, we're going to hear from Dawn Addison, the grant officer. Dawn is the grant officer for planning grantees and implementation grantees, but she's here to represent her group, which includes Kimberly Shields, who works with the support service grantees, and also Anna Aerosmith, who works with the training grants. And we're also joined by Carla Garcia, who's been working with all the different grant types. So I'm going to hand it over to Dawn Addison, and she's going to talk more about the financial reporting. Take it away, Dawn.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. I know I've been in contact with all of you through email, so except for the trainee grantees probably. So hello. I just want to go talk real quickly about the stuff that's not so fun, that we all don't enjoy too much, and that's the financial reporting. The financial reporting is very important in that if it's not done properly and if it's not done on time, we all have a lot of issues that we don't want to deal with. So I know it was mentioned earlier, and you all should have got emails from all of us regarding the first report that's due at the end of this month. Initially, we believed that you wouldn't have to do it to submit it due to the fact that the grant was just awarded to everyone on December 1st, and that quarter ended December the 30th. And so in the past, we haven't required reports from, financial reports from grantees. However, because of the size of the program now and the number of grantees that we have on board, and with our system, we're now requiring that fourth quarter 2015 report be submitted. And so I sent out to all the implementation grantees information on an example of what that report should look like. So if you need that, it would be the same for all implementation support services and trainee grantees. So if you need it, I can make sure that you get it so that you can submit it. If for some reason you don't have access to FIPRs yet, if you haven't submitted your 674s, or which is the request to access form, or if they haven't processed it yet, we understand that. Just let us know, and we'll certainly work with you to get that taken care of. In a nutshell, implementation support services and training grantees are required, as noted in your terms and conditions, to submit your financial reports on a quarterly basis. These reports provide a financial history for the end of each quarter of your project. Depending on the number of the length of your project, whether it's a year, 2 years, a year or 2 years, then it's broken down into quarters. So each 3-month quarter, the project of your project, a financial report is required. It is required to be entered into FIPRs. I just mentioned that as our food programs reporting system on a quarterly basis, and the schedule is listed below. I'll get to that in a minute. And it should be entered in 30 days after the close of each quarter. So in regards to this first report that's due, the grant was due. The grant was awarded on December the 1st of 2015, and that was the end of the quarter. So the report will be due January 30th. That's just an example. The final report is due 90 days after the end of your project period, after the end of your grant period. On your 529, on your grant agreement, it tells you your start and end date. That end date is the date, 90 days after that end date is when your final report is due. If you get an extension to your grant and your end date changes, say you were due to end December 30th, 2016, but you got an extension to, say, June 30th, 2017, then 90 days after that your report would due. So if you were to get an extension, we would make sure that you know your new end date. When submitted into FIPRs, there is someone who enters the report in and someone who certifies. In some instances, it may be the same person. At some point, someone must certify that what was entered in the system is in true accurate account of that reporting period, financial data for that reporting period. And here's the schedule, the quarterly schedule for implementation support services and trainee grantees. I'm not going to read it to you. There it is. It's also on the website, the resource website that Matt and all have put up for you. So it lays out all this, the dates of the quarters and the due dates for the reports to be entered in. It goes in again to what I was referring to. If your project is more than a year, then the schedule continues, and we can give you a full broken out schedule just so that you can have it. We go again into saying that your final reports are due 90 days after the end of your project. And we give an example. Again, if your project ends on December 31st, your final progress and financial reports are due 90 days later, which would be that March 31st, 2017 date. And one thing to add into that, and I'm sure we'll get into it once we have the gathering this April, is that no expenses may be incurred after your end date. So all of your expenses must be obligated prior to whatever your end date is. That means that you all would need to kind of anticipate what your expenses would be for closeout. So if your grant ends December 31st, 2016, and you have 90 days, that means that someone's going to be putting in some work in January, February, and part of March into paying your final invoices, doing your evaluation report, and that sort of thing. And so you want to kind of estimate what those expenses would be, what that amount would be, and you want to make sure that you obligate those funds on your financial report, and we'll go over that more in detail at at the meeting, and we'll show you what that means. But that's very important because we're dealing with those who haven't obligated the funds, and now they're having a hard time accessing them. So just keep that in mind. You can make a little note, and if you want to discuss it more at the meeting in April, we would definitely do that. Planning grantees, you all are a little different in that your projects are set for 18 months, and your schedule is more on a semi-annual basis, and that means that your your financial reports are due every 6 months as opposed to every 3 or 4 months. Like the others, your reports are to be entered into our FIPR system. They are to be entered electronically. Like the others, they need to be certified by someone on your staff to say that this, in fact, is an accurate account of your history. Like the others, your report is due 30 days after the end of the half or each semi-annual reporting period. And like the others, your fund report is due 90 days after the end of your grant period. So again, if you look on your grant agreement and you look at your end date, 90 days after that, your final report is due. And the same thing applies. Make sure that you anticipate what your expenditures would be for your closeout and obligate those funds so that you can have access to your funds and not have any problem. It's your money, you're entitled to it, but it just takes a lot of extra leg and paperwork. We would need additional documentation, that sort of thing, to make sure that we can get you the money that you're deserved. And I think that's it. Here's the reporting schedule for our planning grantees. The semi-annual halves goes from December to March, and then April to September, and then October to March again. So the reports are due. Your first report isn't due until April of this year. So you all are pretty good. You should have plenty of time to get your Level 2 e-authentication and to get access to FIPRs. The second report, again, will be due October 31st, and then the third semi-annual report will be due April 30th, 2017. Again, 90 days after your end date, we will have we will be looking for your final report. And I think that's it. Oh, no, I want to hurry up. Just some things for all grant types. When you're filling out your report, some things we've noticed in the past that grantees have, when entering the report, has caused some concerns and having to do revisions, which we don't want to do. So always remember, when you enter into the system, a lot of the information is going to be entered in for you because that they've already entered that into the system when they set up your accounts. Where you all would really need to pay attention to is your report type. It's either going to be quarterly or semi-annual, and then your project period. Please always remember that your project period, which is box 8 on the financial report, is your start and end date. So that box 8 will be the date that the grant was awarded on your grant agreement, which will be December the 1st, 2015 for everyone. And then whatever your end date is, it's going to be your to date. So that's very important because if you put it one way the first time, and then if you go back and do it a different date the second time, the system's not going to recognize it. It's going to give you an error. But many have done if they put in the reporting period dates and not the project date. So make sure you put your grant project date, which is your start and end date, on your grant agreement. Next thing I want you to remember is that box 10, which is the transaction section, you want to make sure that you put in that D through H. That's pretty much the areas that you all will focus on. And I have an example that, again, I can share with you. Always remember, again, in box 10, Section 10, transactions to enter in the recipient share amount. These grants, everyone is required to submit at least 25% of the grant fund. So you know in your budget, whatever it was that you all were slated to put in to contribute towards the grant, whether it be $15,000 or whatever it is that said you all were going to put in, that information needs to be documented on the grant agreement. Indirect expense, box 11. If you all claimed in your budget, excuse me, if you all claimed in your budget to charge or to request indirect expenses, to cover indirect expenses, that needs to be entered in as well, and that's in box 11. So make sure you put that in. Another thing to note is that this system, these reports are sequentially. So if for some reason someone forgets to do this first report due January 30th for our implementation support service and training grantees. If someone forgets to do this report and then go to enter in your next report, which is due in April, it's not going to let you because it's going to look for that first report. So you have to go back, enter in the first report. Your grant officer will have to post it, and then you'll be able to go in and submit your next report. So remember that these are sequential reports, and the first report has to be done before the second can be done. Now, I think I'm done.
Thank you very much, Dawn. And just a reminder, you can always reach out to us if you have any questions about the financial reports or the progress reports. And there's a lot of information on our grantee resource page, including the schedules for all the due dates in the schedules. So I know it's a lot of information, but the resources should be there for you online, and we're always available and there to help you if you need it. So with that, we're coming right up on the end of the hour. I just want to let everybody know that we are all set for April 13th and 14th in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm going to send out an email to everybody this afternoon that has links to the hotel information. It has information about the airport, the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, which is the closest one, and links to blocks that we have reserved at the hotel, the Embassy Suites there in Fort Worth, and the Marriott next door. So just want to give everybody a heads up. This lovely picture is from last year's grantee gathering. And so keep an eye out for that. Again, we are at the top of the hour, so just wanted to say thank you to everybody. We will stick around to answer questions if you want to, but I know people are busy, so just wanted to say thank you to everybody. This webinar will be recorded. We'll have it on our website as soon as we get the audio transcribed. And just want to encourage everybody to please, reach out to us if you have any questions about any of this. I know it's a lot of information, but we'll do what we can to help you through these different processes. And just want to thank everybody for joining us. And also thank you to our speakers today. So with that, I want to say goodbye to everybody, but we will stick around for folks if there's any questions that are coming across the chat line.
Matt, there's one question from Carrie. I don't think it has been answered yet.
Okay. There is, so Carrie has a question about training grants and specific metrics. So the requirements that we have for the training grants, you will not be submitting a baseline or a final report, or well, not a baseline report. You will be on a quarterly basis asked questions, really program monitoring questions. So, how's your project going? Are there any changes in your schedule, any changes in key personnel? What are your key challenges? What are your key, what are your highlights, best practices? We'll send those questions out soon. As far as any key metrics, what we are asking everybody to do is to, as Carrie notes here, is to collect that information about the required questions, and that's again in the Appendix A evaluation, and that's on the grantee resource page, but it was also in your award letter. So that is what we are asking of the training grantees. And Carrie, if you have any other follow-up questions on that, just reach out to us. there's a question about the 10% de minimis for indirects in that final fixed provisional or others entering 425. So Dawn, do you know the question, the answer to that one? They're using the 10% de minimis, and is that a final fixed provisional or other when they enter it into that 425?
At that point, it would be fixed at whatever the at that 10% for that time. It should be listed as a 10%. I mean, I'm sorry, as a You know what? I'm not sure because that. Well, I'm not sure. I need to follow up with that because it would be fixed in that that's what it is, but it will not be the final because at some point they would need to negotiate that. So we'll have to check on that. Carla, do you know the answer to that? Carla's on the line.
Yeah, I think it would be best to check on that since that is a fairly new thing that just came down. I know we're working on that internally, so we should probably get back to that guidance.
We'll check and get back. I think it's supposed to be fixed, but I just want to make sure that's the correct answer.
Right. If that's going to be their permanent, but if they're negotiating, I don't know if they're coming back, and then it would probably be the other. Probably depends on them also. So it'd be good for them to ask them that question directly too, whoever's writing that in.
So Susan, Susan, if you are not if we don't have your email as one of the points of contact, just shoot us a email, and so that we have your contact information directly.
Yes, Matt. I'm going to post that to our indirect cost experts anyway, and then once I get the answer, I'll just send it to you, and you can put it out there.
Okay, great. We'll get it out there for the group too.
Yes.
Melissa has a question about the program progress reports they sent out via link, and the answer to that is yes. We send out, so the person for your organization that was listed as the reporting contact will receive a link that's unique to your organization with the progress report template in it. That you can click on that link. It takes you to an online form. You can fill it out there. When you hit submit, it goes to your regional lead, and it also goes right back to you. So you get a copy of it. Everything you submit, you get a copy of it emailed to you as well.
And the first time that will be sent is on April 1st, reporting for the first quarter of this year and for December of last year. And folks will have April 1st to April 31st to complete that report.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
And just a reminder that the reporting schedule is listed on these slides, but also on the Grantee resource page. It's in a printable PDF. It's broken down by grant type. So encourage everybody to go there, download that, print it off, and it has the due dates and what you're reporting on, both financial and progress reports. If you have any questions about that, just reach out to us. And the Grantee resource page is new this year. So if you have any suggestions on how to improve it, maybe it's missing some information that you find yourself asking on a regular basis, like sure wish I had this readily available, just reach out and let us know, because if you're asking for it, I'm sure other folks are, and we can get that, we can get it added.
There's another question from Andrea.
Yes. There's a question about the progress report. There is not a progress report due January 31st. There is a financial report due, but not a progress report. Your first progress report will be in April, and we just ask that you submit any activities that took place in December. We do that because folks are really just getting up to speed in December, and to reduce some of the reporting burden that happens at the beginning of the project. You have a lot going on, so at least for the progress reports, because we're not bound by that system that requires a January report, you'll submit that in your April report. Amy Weaver's asking that there is a baseline report on the web page for the, but has a link been sent to the contacts? And yes, everybody, the reporting contact that was listed on the online form that everyone filled out, all the grantees, you all submitted your contact information, and we sent the baseline report to the person listed as the reporting contact. if, Amy, in your situation or in other folks' situation, you feel like you should have received that or the person listed on there did not receive it, let us know and we can resend the link to that person. Here's a great question from Mike Bride. Mike, this is a good question for Dawn and Carla. If nothing has been spent, are we to submit a zero financial report?
When you go in to enter in your financial report, again, it's on you're reporting just for that quarter. So yes, when you go into it, it's going to pull up whatever you entered in the previous quarter. For this first report, all you have to do is enter in your award amount. So once you go into the system for the first report, you enter in, you'll see that there's a line that says total federal funds authorized. That is the amount that you were awarded. And so you would put that amount there, and that's it. If I have to put in as well as the total recipient share required, and that's the amount that you, as the grantee, what to contribute to the project. And that's it for this first report for implementation, support service, and training grantees. When you go to your next report, if you still have not submitted, if you have not expended any expenditures, then it would pretty much be the same thing. If for some instance, next report you have expenses, and then the following report, the following quarter, you do not, then yes, it's going to ask you for the amount on what you spent that quarter. That's what you put in. If it's zero, then you put zero. If you once you submit it and once you go back and look at it on the analysis page, you'll see it broken out by quarter, and it would show first quarter, just the award amount, no expenses. Second quarter, say you had $5,000. Third quarter, you had nothing, so it would show zero. So yes.
Thank you, Dawn. We have another question here about the different types of grants. The question is a planning grant and a training grant the same? And the answer to that is no. Those are two distinct grants. The planning grants went to school districts who were just getting started with their grant program, and they're putting together their action plan over the next 18 months. A training grant is a different grant track that went to eligible entities to support trainings and events related to farm to school in either their state, their region, or nationally. Great question, though. All right, and does anybody else have any other questions before we wrap it up? It looks like the questions are starting to slow down a little bit. We appreciate everybody working with us on this system. This is a new webinar system, so the chat function is somewhat new, so appreciate everybody. Seems to be working pretty well. If you have any follow-up questions or just prefer to talk through things over the phone, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and give us a ring or just shoot us an email. And just want to say thanks to everybody. Again, thanks to all our presenters, and keep an eye out for that Grantee Gathering email this afternoon. And we're looking forward to seeing you all very soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.